And this, I believe, is going to cause problems for maintaining close ties between Israel on one hand and the American Jewish community on the other, because the American Jewish community is going to have difficulty identifying with an Israel that's increasingly dominated by the ultra-Orthodox, because most American Jews are secular. And whereas Israel was founded by and run by secular Jews in the beginning, and still is, that situation is nevertheless changing. And that'll cause an opening in relations between the two sides.
كيف لا يمكن للرئيس أوباما تحقيق حل الدولتين؟ هل هذا يرتبط بقوة وعمق ودوام اللوبي الإسرائيلي في الولايات المتحدة؟ You said President Obama will probably be unable to achieve a two-state solution. Give us your reasons.
Well, every American president since 1967 has been opposed to the building of settlements in the occupied territories. That's every single American president. Yet there are now 480,000 settlers in the occupied territories, a huge network of connector and bypass roads, settlements themselves. In other words, no president has been able to stop the Israelis from settlement building, even though it has been official policy to oppose that whole enterprise. And that's since 1967, when the Israelis first conquered the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Now, some people might argue that Obama is different, that he's special, that he's a tough guy, that he's going to pick a fight and win that fight with the Israel lobby, where his predecessors couldn't do that. There is hardly any evidence to support that argument. And I would note to you that during the Gaza massacre, between December 2008 and January 2009, when people all over the world were criticizing the Israelis for their brutal assault on the Palestinians who were locked up in this small enclave, Barack Obama, who was soon to be President of the United States, said virtually nothing. So I think the argument that he's going to stand up to the Israelis and get tough with them, there's no evidence to support that.
والسبب ربما اللوبي. أنت في كتاب لك مشهور مثير للجدل أيضا، على الأقل انتقادات موجهة لك من جانب الجالية اليهودية الأمريكية وفي العالم، تقول أن اللوبي الإسرائيلي في الولايات المتحدة يهيمن على السياسة الخارجية الأمريكية ومضر بالمصالح الأمريكية. Is the reason the powerful lobby in your book? You say that the lobby is actually not just dominating America's foreign policy in the Middle East, but also it does hurt U.S. interests.
It's very important to emphasize, especially to people who don't live in the United States, that interest groups wield tremendous power in the American political system. We have organizations like the National Rifle Association, the American Association of Retired People, the Farm Lobby, the Cuba Lobby. These interest groups wield tremendous power. We sometimes say they punch above their weight. The Israel Lobby is another one of these remarkably powerful interest groups. And presidents don't like to pick fights with these interest groups because they almost always lose. And even when they win, they pay an awful price in the process. So what you have here is a situation where Barack Obama is not well positioned to pick a fight with the lobby, even though he believes that the lobby is pushing a set of policies regarding the two-state solution that are not only not in America's interest, and certainly not in the Palestinians' interest, but are also not in Israel's interest. Obama understands that a two-state solution would be good for Israel, and it would be good for Israel if he could put pressure on it to accept the two-state solution. But he cannot do it because, again, you have this remarkably powerful interest group that would punish him politically if he tried to get tough with the Israelis. So in the end, what we have here is this rather bizarre situation where the lobby is preventing Obama from pursuing a policy alternative that would be good for Israel. And instead, the lobby is forcing Obama to, in effect, accept a greater Israel, which will be a disaster in the end for Israel.
في النهاية اشرح لنا النصائح أو المشورة التي يمكن أن تقدمها للفلسطينيين بشأن مستقبلهم. What advice do you have for the Palestinians?
My advice for the Palestinians is to accept the fact that there's not going to be a two-state solution. Accept the fact that there's going to be a one-state solution and that it's going to be initially an apartheid state. And then what the Palestinians should understand is that their principal goal should be to turn that apartheid Israel into a democratic binational state. And the way to do that is to get the international community, to include the United States, to include the West Europeans, on their side. What they have to do is adopt the South Africa strategy, which is to delegitimize apartheid Israel, to make it impossible for Israel to continue to exist as an apartheid state. It's really a war of ideas. And what the Palestinians have to do is understand that they're engaged in a war of ideas. And then they have to think about what's the best way to win that war of ideas. And I would argue there that there are two things to keep in mind. One is that you want to develop a large body of able spokesmen or spokespersons, individuals who can go out to the United States, go out to Europe, get on television and make the Israelis' case. And it's not a hard case to make because the Israelis, to make the Palestinians' case, because the Palestinians are arguing for democracy, the Israelis will be having to defend apartheid. So you want able spokespersons. Second thing is, I think that the Palestinians should resist mightily. The Palestinians should definitely resist, but they should not use violence. I think violence is counterproductive and dangerous. I think violence is counterproductive because it makes it more difficult for the Palestinians to win the war of ideas. It makes it more difficult for the Palestinians to win allies in the West, because then the Israelis can portray the Palestinians as terrorists. So I would advise the Palestinians to stay away from terrorism and to pursue Gandhi-like tactics so they can help win important allies in the West. The other reason that the Palestinians, in my opinion, want to stay away from violence is they don't want to provide the Israelis with an excuse to expel them from the West Bank and from Gaza. The Israelis, as we know, are thinking long and hard about this demographic problem, and there are all sorts of reasons to worry that the Israelis, if given an opportunity, will expel the Palestinians or try to expel the Palestinians at some future date, the way they did in 1948. And the Palestinians, in my opinion, do not want to give the Israelis any excuse to engage in massive ethnic cleansing. And violence on the part of the Palestinians may provide just that kind of opportunity for the Israelis. So I would argue Palestinians want to understand the two-state solution is dead. The peace process is a charade, it's a joke, and that what they ought to do is now start thinking in terms of one state and how to take that one state, which will initially be an apartheid state, and transform it into a binational democracy.
في نهاية هذا الحوار نشكر ضيفنا في الاستوديو في واشنطن البروفيسور جون ميرشايمر الأستاذ المرموق في جامعة شيكاغو والمؤلف وصاحب كتاب صدر أخيرا يتحدث فيه عن الضرر الذي يلحق المصالح الأمريكية الاستراتيجية من جراء اللوبي الإسرائيلي. Thank you very much.